Please welcome Sarah and Lily.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Lily.
So we met in India about 4 years ago when we were both travelling solo, and we decided we were up for a much bigger challenge.
So last year we travelled all 48 mainland states without spending a single cent on anything at all, from the moment we got off the plane to the moment we got back to the airport 5 months later.
This is the route we took. So we started off in Boston in May and made our way anti-clockwise around the country. We hitchhiked, we couch surfed, we found food in various different ways. And at the end of the trip, we'd travelled over 13,500 miles.
It took us about 2 years thinking about the trip, but only a few weeks of actual planning. We saved up so that we had enough money in the bank in case anything went wrong, but in kit, flights, insurance, etc., the trip cost us about £800 each.
So, since we've only got 6 minutes and we want to push the go on an adventure message as much as possible, we decided to come up with a list of things you are not allowed to let stand in your way. First things first, we're unashamed to admit it, neither of us look like athletes. A big thing that we've found on this trip is people thinking that to go on an adventure, it needs to be something physically demanding or record-breaking. It doesn't. Doing an adventure can be anything that you find challenging.
Sarah and I love the idea of completing random challenges. We came up with one whilst we were drinking 2 bottles of beer in London that had cost us £7, and we wondered whether we'd be able to hitchhike from London to Edinburgh with that £7 still in our pockets to buy a couple of pints when we got there. This challenge took us just 24 hours, so having no time is no excuse.
Another worry that people have is thinking that you need buckets of cash to go on an adventure. Sure, if you're going to row an ocean, you're going to need a boat. But at the end of the day, if you haven't got much money to spare, then go on an adventure that doesn't cost much. The best memories that anyone has is of the people they met and the things they did, not the money they spent. And who knows, you could end up in a limo anyway.
One of the reasons for our trip was to meet as many people as possible, and not spending any money really pushed us to do that. At the same time, we were very careful to be resourceful and make sure that no one ever felt obligated to help us out. On day 2, we volunteered at a food rescue project where we learned all about food waste in America and got to know a group of people that we otherwise wouldn't have met.
Funnily enough, that same group of people were completely terrified by the idea of our trip. They really believed that we should be completely terrified by anyone that wasn't them, even saying 40% of the people in Maine are on meth, which wasn't true.
So raise your hand if you've hitchhiked before.
Ooh.
Cool. And how many of you would encourage someone you know and love to do it today? Good.
Okay, a good amount, but it is amazing to how many people think that something that was once possible is no longer possible today. You'd think with phones and internet we'd all be feeling really connected, but sometimes you feel like it's just used to share scary stories.
The important thing about travel and adventure is experiencing the world for yourself and gaining the knowledge to make your own judgments, not just relying on what you've been told.
That said, the first day we hitchhiked in America, we were bricking it. We definitely had a sense of dread in our stomach as we walked towards our first hitch location, but we were picked up in seconds.
So, Sarah doesn't have a penis, and I don't have a penis. It is annoying to even have to stand up here and say, you can do this as a woman. But sadly, it is something that still needs saying, and it is something that needs remembering.
On a trip like this, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If it's easy, it's because you're a woman. If it's hard, it's because you're a woman. One man even said it's easy because you've got tits, and plenty more suggested it.
At the end of the day, don't let your obstacles be decided for you by somebody else. You decide your barriers, you decide your limits, you decide what you're able to achieve.
The last item on our list is don't sweat the small stuff. You can plan and plan to your heart's content, and things are still going to go wrong. It's easy to get bogged down in planning and researching and making everything perfect, but at the end of the day, adventure is meant to be unpredictable. Just remember, everything in life is either a great experience or a story to tell.
One thing we always get asked is, what was your favourite state? That's way too difficult to answer, but we do have a favourite story.
We were in South Dakota, and we'd taken a 10-hour detour to go and see Mount Rushmore. It wasn't worth it. And it was 7 a.m. and already boiling hot. We were walking up to the main road to start hitchhiking when a woman pulled over ahead of us and started waving and shouting.
Where are you going in this heat and with those big bags?
After a bit of explaining, she agreed to take us over to Mount Rushmore if we came to her house and helped her unload her shopping. She lived over in that direction, but she'd hurt her neck.
Her name is Angie, and on the drive over to her house, we talked all about our lives and her life, finding out she is one of those people who is endlessly loving and resilient in the face of hard times, with so much love and kindness for the world. We basically wanted to stay in that car and talk to her all day.
After she'd taken us to Mount Rushmore and invited us to stay the night, Angie asked us, if you were spending money, what's one thing you'd want to do in South Dakota? We replied that we'd loved to have seen the Badlands. They're these crazy rock formations that make miles and miles look like the surface of the moon, but they would be there for another time.
Instead of just smiling and nodding, Angie filled her car with gas, packed a cooler of drinks and snacks at her beautiful ranch in the Black Hills, and sent us off to the Badlands for the day in her car, telling us to give her a text when we're on our way home so that she can put dinner on. We'd literally known her a few hours, and she was trusting us with her car and completely sharing her home with us.
We were blown away by the kindness of strangers on our trip, especially with everything you're hearing about the US in the news at the moment. We're lucky enough to have 1,000 stories like this one, but Angie sticks with us as one of being just pure kindness and trust. He really made us feel like family.
Now we've reached the end of our 6 minutes, and all we have left to say is that any limitation on travel or adventure, or just stepping outside your front door, is yours to decide. Don't let anyone else tell you what you can or cannot do.
We went to America thinking that we knew it pretty well. We'd holidayed there, they're always in the news, we speak the same languages, watch the same films. We had no clue. So, traveling penniless in America for 5 months was a crazy American crash course, but really any type of travel that helps you form your own opinion of a place is just so powerful and so valuable. The last thing we have left to say is get out there, go on an adventure.